The roundtable, which is one of the final events in our conference, LIFEGENMON Conference, Forest Science for Future Forests. Within the press conference, we are going to combine and try to communicate the main messages from different stakeholders, important for both sustainable forest management and the bioeconomy. So we shall start with a few presentations by the representatives of the scientific part in Slovenian research in forests, forestry, and wood science. There will be the director of the Slovenian Forestry Institute, the deputy director for professional affairs from the Slovenia Forest Service, the vice dean of the biotechnical faculty. Then we shall have representatives of the ministry responsible for forestry and of the ministry representative for science. We shall have two representatives of industry and also forest owners, chambers of commerce and what is it called, agricultural forestry chamber. And then we shall also ask some of our colleagues from abroad. So the deputy director of the European Forest Institute, the coordinator of EUFORGIN, also from the situated at European Forest Institute, one of our and two of our partners from LIFEGENMON project, who will present the need for forest genetic monitoring and the experience of forest genetic monitoring in Germany. So now to start with, I would like to ask Docent Dr. Primož Simončič, director of the Slovenian Forestry Institute, to give his statement.
Dear colleagues, one of the questions of the round table is, of course, the role of forest science and implementation of its supporting for resilience and climate change plans. The very difficult science and implementation of scientific research and development. Maybe I could talk only in the name of institute and colleagues in Slovenia, which are in common group for forests, wood science, and paper research. This is a group which is dedicated in the goals and which is part of how our founding at the national level is organized through the research agency, Slovenian Research Agency. So we see what kind of, what is the current status and what we should do to move and to reach these new goals which are in front of us. So the question, what we face in Slovenia as a whole is how development policy will look like, how potential national and EU funds can be invested to achieve development goals, such as higher quality of life, environmental sustainability, and high add value of our economy. The last two topics are connected with our topic. So where we are, where biotechnical part in our science in Slovenia is, according to the data from our agency, we see that a little bit less than 10% of the founding is dedicated to biotechnics, and biotechnics is divided then again to 6 topics, and one of these topics are forestry and wood science. So what we see is that that's pretty stable or a little bit going down in last 10 years, the founding. So of course, what we think, so in forestry and wood research, institutions, and also in we have a coordination of research institutes in Slovenia. We think that we have a goal that we raise from 0.4 or a little bit more percent of BDP, which is dedicated for research. We should put this on close to 1%. This is a goal. This is not real today, but we hope that with a new legislation, which is in process, a new RD legislation, we could achieve in a few years. We hope that this will be somehow proceeded and that we get a new act for research. So what does it mean in real numbers for forestry and wood? We say full-time funding. In the momentary, for the whole sector, there are 10 full-times, a little bit less than 10 full-times to support our research work. So we hope this will change, because it's interesting that especially forestry and agriculture in Slovenia, research work is divided to part which is funded by Ministry of Science, and another part is funded by Ministry of Agriculture and Forestry and Ministry of Environmental and Spatial Planning and others. So we see that this is quite a low percentage if we are comparing to natural science, techniques, engineering, and others fields. So one of the goals is to raise that number. We are quite optimistic because we see that despite this relatively low stable funding, the institutes and the university and researchers, the number of them, it's growing. We have today around 150 researchers in program groups which are working on this thematic. So we think that first we need to stabilize the funding of the forestry and food science in Slovenia. This is one task in front of us, and we hope that this will happen also with help of the new law. Then another important information is also to know that internationalization of the research of our groups it's pretty high. So in our case, it's more than 30% of funding of research in forestry at our institute, for example, is from EU. So one thing is also to think how to raise the investments into infrastructure, research infrastructure. This is could be a part of also post-COVID funding in near future. This could be a part. Then we should also see what are our another opportunities to find the funds, especially for the investments in, I think, in institutes as a building, in laboratories, equipment, and networks in the field. So we hope that we move this not very high percentage of BDP on a higher level in near future. We hope that there will be some investments in, because without investments we could not plan or expect higher added value in our research. And we hope that we could achieve some general agreement on horizontal level between ministries to support our work. That means all main ministries in Slovenia, ministries of science, ministries of agriculture, forestry, and Ministry of Environment. This is a short message from my side.
Thank you, Primož. So our goal would be, hopefully, for the future, to go and reach 2% of the funds available for science and research in Slovenia in the future. Now I would like to ask Deputy Director of the Slovenia Forest Service, Dr. Aleš Polanc, to present his statement.
Yes. Thank you. Hello, everyone. I would like to deal with you a view from the practice. So we all know that climate change affects forests sufficiently, and that these effects could be somehow summarized in the changing of growing conditions and site conditions, and on the other hand also with an increased rate of disturbances. In Slovenia we had in the last 5 years a few major catastrophic events which affect almost half of the forest area. 20 million of cubic meters of wood from the forest was damaged, and that's why we need to adapt to the new conditions. And here the forest science and research plays a major role, because only science, only scientific basis could give us adaptation of our current forest management practices, or to find new measures, new adaptation measures to prevent our forests of this major catastrophic event. But the science is not enough. We need also to transfer this knowledge to the practice, and such an implementation project that LIFEGENMON could here help to transfer all the knowledge which was gathered by the research to the practitioners, to the managers of the forest, and also to the policymakers to prepare the regulations and to change the management practice. So in Slovenia, we have a sufficient forest planning system on a different levels, and to transfer the knowledge from the science could go through these management plans and to reach the every stand and every forest practitioner. In the next year, we will prepare the regional plans, forest management plans for the regions, which is approved by the government, and that's very important. And all this project, implementation project, and the knowledge that they produce will be somehow integrated in this management plans, and I believe that this will present an important measures also to adapt to the climate change, and that our forest management will be better in the future than it is now. So in my name, and also in the name of institution of Slovenia Forest Service, I would really like to thank the project team and everyone who contribute to find new ways to adapt to the climate change. So that would be all. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Polanc. It is of utmost importance, and it is completely impossible to implement our outputs in the practice without the support and the appreciation and the acceptance of our outputs by the Slovenia Forest Service. We hope we have already, and we shall indeed contribute to the resilience and sustainability of our forests in the future. Thank you very much. Now I would like to ask Professor Dr. Miha Humar, the Vice Dean of the Biotechnical Faculty for Research and Development, to and also representative of the Wood Science Department and Research Program Group to present his statement.
Thank you very much. I have prepared a short presentation about the topic I would like to talk. And at the beginning, I have to say that unfortunately I have to confirm all the statements that was given the first talk by the director of the Forestry Institute, Primož Simončič. I mean, we are all issues the problem in financing of the research activities, and sometimes the competition within our project within the national project is even higher than the competition within the European project, which is sometimes very, very, very frustrating for all of us. But in the second part of my talk, I would like to stick to the let's say, part where colleague Aleš from the Slovenian Forest Service ended. Climate changes do not only influence the forests, but have influence also on the wood. And there are several points or topics where this influence occurs. First one is climate changes influence on the, let's say, wood species that will be available in Slovenian forests. And at the very moment, the majority of the Slovenian forest-based industries is based on the production of on the processing of the coniferous wood. And it is likely to expect that the share of the conifers will decrease in the near future. That's the first issue. The second issue is that not only the share of, or let's say the forests are changing, but also the quality of the wood is changing. And we never know how, because this effect is not uniform. Properties of certain wood species are better, while the other ones are, let's say, decreased. And this needs to be assessed in order to, let's say, use wood correctly. But the biggest threat that we have, from my point of view, that we are facing right now is relating to the fact that the importance of the wood building industry is increasing. And right now, I mean, what we noticed is that there are certain pests spreading all over Europe, and they are spreading to the regions where we've never seen them before. For example, termites. Termites were, let's say, in the past present only locally in some regions of Slovenia, but nowadays they're spreading, let's say, more and more to the continental parts of Slovenia. And if we are thinking about the increased share of the wooden buildings in those regions, those termites can pose significant threats to those buildings. And not only termites, due to the climate changes, the weather is getting warmer and warmer, more humid and humid, so this means that there are much more favorable conditions for wood decay. We have calculated the indexes for Ljubljana based on the existing meteorological data, and the so-called Schaeffer index, which indicates the, let's say, severeness of the climate for wood in certain region, increased from 50 to 60. So if we express it in terms of the, let's say, geographical terms, it increased from Ljubljana to, let's say, the Turkish some Turkish humid coast. So Ljubljana is becoming more and more Mediterranean city from the possible threat to the wood as well. So that's why I would like to emphasize that we need to, let's say, monitor these changes. Sometimes all those researches are long-term researches that cannot be performed in the frame of the, let's say, short 2 years or 2 or 3 years project. So from that point of view, we need a long-term project that will allow us to do these tasks that are important not only for science, but also for the whole construction and wood industry sector. Thank you.
Thank you very much. For the in-view into the changes in the production and the resources. Thank you very much. Now I would like to ask the representative of the ministry responsible for forestry, Magister Alenka Korenjak, to give a statement.
Good morning, everybody. On behalf of the Ministry of Agriculture, Forestry and Food, I congratulate again the whole team for a well done job at the LIFEGENMON project. At the Ministry, we tend to implement the useful outputs of the project into the forest legislation, especially the genetic monitoring, which is at the moment not sufficiently represented. As I emphasized on the first day of the conference, we do believe that research and knowledge are the key answers coping with the climate changes in the future. And research on forest genetics is a high importance, providing sustainable and multifunctional forestry in the future. So the Ministry of Agriculture, Forestry and Food will support the research project on forest genetics in the future too, and thus it is very likely we collaborate again soon, carrying out the next research project. Thank you.
And as a next panelist, we would like to ask Marta Chavez from the Ministry for Education, Science and Sport to give us her insight into this topic.
Hello, congratulations at the end of the project and the results presented to the whole consortium. Maybe I would like to talk about a few steps that I see them from my point of view as a national contact point for of the European research programs, especially the Horizon Europe, which is at the end now, and maybe the continuation, Horizon 2020 and its continuation as Horizon Europe that will start next year. So as Europe was following, related mostly to your activities, as Europe made a huge investment through the framework programs into research, but they wanted to see, or Europe wanted to see, more impact of results of these investments. So at the end of Horizon 2020, they launched the so-called Green Deal call. I believe you are all familiar because the consultations were going on for quite a while after the Green Deal document was published at the end of last year. And so the Green Deal call was just published this week, and there is more information. Information days were going on this week in Brussels, so there is a lot of information about this call. What Europe wanted to make is more impact of its investment in Horizon 2020 projects, also previous framework programs, and of the LIFE projects that were going on in Europe. So what they wanted to make is make an impact of research on green recovery in Europe and also wider. I would maybe, from the Green Deal call, I would maybe put more an accent or your attention put on the area 7 of the Green Call, which is dealing with biodiversity and ecosystems recovery. This is a field that is funded from the Societal Challenge 2, so this is on bio issues, and from the Societal Challenge 5, which is on environment issues. And biodiversity call will try to unite the results of the funded projects to make an impact. So it will be not so oriented on research, but on implementation of research results of the funded projects. Through diverse, so I already mentioned the Horizon 2020 projects, also LIFE projects, also by using all the data of different European platforms to make certain practices, to put them in life, and to make them as an example, to put them on a larger scale. So what this means, it means to restore certain ecosystems, to restore biodiversity in certain areas, certain regions, and to give some practical results until 2020, and even further on in the future by involving all the stakeholders from the preparation of these restoration projects, which should be this demonstration and also pilot projects, good practices that could be then put even in at a higher level or used in other regions in Europe and wider to restore ecosystems. So this should have also an impact on society, look at the society changes, and also an economic impact. So here I really see the LIFEGENMON results or its connections or all the collaborations that were made together in Europe to put on a higher level. There will be 80 million available for this call, and projects up from 16 to 25 millions big should apply for this. And projects should be, at least funded, should be projects that deal with terrestrial environments, with marine environments, and also with freshwater environments. So the call was published now. The deadline is in January to apply for the projects, and the projects should start next summer. This is one immediate opportunity to upgrade the results on a higher level. The second initiative, or the second thing about which I would like to talk, is European partnerships, or just a brief information. There were, at the beginning, 40 partnerships proposed in Europe. Then there was also there were additional partnerships, one of which came from the forest sector. Unfortunately, our ministry really supported it, but at the European level, it was decided that forestry is included in other partnerships. So there was no special partnership a European partnership on forestry. But there is a partnership which is also quite in an advanced stage of preparation, and that is biodiversity. Biodiversity is kind of continuation of the forest era, or upgrade of forest era ERANET, just to give you a brief idea of what we are talking about. It requires a commitment of different ministries in Europe, also abroad, from science and environment mostly, to commit to invest in Horizon Europe in the next 7 years, their effort and their finances to, in the case of biodiversity, in 6 calls in the next 7 years, And our Ministry of Research, has the intention to participate in those calls. It is not yet official, but there was a letter from the commissioner that the deadline for the countries and the ministry to respond is the 15th of October. So in the next months, in the next 2-3 weeks, we will know how it will go on. So the intention of our Ministry of Research is to participate in the research calls. But biodiversity has also, the partnership of biodiversity has also another activity with it, which is monitoring. Monitoring of biodiversity for standardization or unification, the ways how monitoring is done. But unfortunately, our ministry is it is our duty to coordinate in which partnerships, because it's we are dealing with research. It's our duty to coordinate in the state who and how to participate in these partnerships, because it's not only our ministry that can participate. So we were having consultations with other ministries in this field, in which other ministries would be interested to participate. And unfortunately, there was really not a lot of interest from other ministries. There is some for the continuation that ministries knew from before, like metrology, like Eurostars and things like that. But the others that are new, that's really difficult. New things are really difficult to start and to have this interministerial cooperation. So the part at the beginning, especially Ministry of Environment in Slovenia showed some interest to participate in the biodiversity partnership, but then they gave up. So now we have got a negative reply. So it seems that Slovenia will not participate in the monitoring part of the biodiversity partnership, just in the research part, which is really a pity. These things in biodiversity partnerships, many times there are from the same state, from the same country, there are involved ministries of research and ministries of environment, also agencies that deal with these topics. So it gives an opportunity to cooperate not just at the European level, but also in the intersectorial level of a country. And this is, at the moment, it seems that it is an opportunity that was not well, that you did not choose to take. The other things, well, these are the most immediate things. The other thing is obviously the Horizon Europe, but this is something that is still in preparation and will be published at the end of the year, and we will be talking about those later on. Thank you for your attention.
Look into the new opportunities for the financing of the research activities within the frame of this meeting. And as the next panelist, I would like to ask colleague Igor Milavec from Slovenian Chamber of Commerce to give us a look into the development in the forestry and wood-based sector. Please, Igor.
Thank you, Micha. Hello, everybody. In the name of the Chamber of Commerce of Slovenia, I will give you a short view. Also, Micha mentioned something about this building with wood and all other topics. As we all know, wood is becoming one of the most important materials for living in a low-carbon society. That we can see in Slovenia, but we can see also now also in Europe, because also the Commission pushed this topic in between of the most important topics for the future. And this is also evident from the results of the Slovenian wood processing industry, which has grown around 5 to 10% each year in the last 6 years. And similar is in the field in the wooden construction. Well, because here we also recognize annual growth by 6 to 7% per year. So in the last 10 years, we have doubled this production of wooden houses in Slovenia. And because that reason, and because the future potential of wood processing industry and the forest industry, we have been included into 9 priority development areas of Slovenian smart specialization strategy, which operates across strips. We have strip small buildings and home with wooden chain. And in this strip, we are start building one smart wooden house in Maribor in this autumn. And in the next 2 or 3 years, we are planning to build also one bigger, or cassette multi-apartment smart wooden building with Stanovanjski sklad. But we are also concerned as a wood processing industry because the situation in the forests, especially after 2014, with all these troubles, natural troubles, which we had and we still have. Because of course, regular supply of wood is the most important for the future of the wood processing industry. And in the long term, it's also very important planting of suitable tree species concerning the changes, global warming requirements, because we see spruce going out, beech going in, and many other things. So this is very important in long term for us. And in this context, we are also concerned about the ability of Slovenian nurseries to supply quality seedlings and of suitable tree species, not just what we had in the past. So in this case, we have maybe one open question, and we are interested in whether it makes sense to set up a container nursery in Slovenia. So maybe, I don't know if today is the right day, but maybe something in the future. This is an important question also for the wood processing industry. Thank you.
Igor, thank you very much for your industrial perspective. And as a new panelist, I would like to ask Michael Koprivnikov from the Chamber of Agriculture and Forestry to give us another perspective into the respective topic.
Thank you. I represent the side of the forest owners. So the Chamber of Agriculture and Forestry and the the landowners. So also the Zveza lesnikov gozdov, the Association of Forest Owners. Sorry. Our interests are, of course, primarily economical interests. Of course, we have long-term vision, but we are now faced with climate change and big questions. What will happen to our forests in economical sense? Is it sensible to invest in forest, to plant? Which species? And facing also the European policies that are not harmonized On the other hand, side, we would like to build with wood, have green circular economies. On the other hand, we would like to protect as much as we can. And Slovenian forests are beautiful for protection, for all the functions. And so we are now facing big questions, and Slovenia is also facing a big question in these regards. We should do some new national plans regarding the forests, so not only local plans, but a national strategy on forests, and decide what and how. Wood-based industry is, of course, not so much in short term, but in long term very uncertain, because everything is now built on focused on spruce. And spruce, as we know, with up to 5 degrees temperature, that is not manageable in most of Slovenian circumstances. And we are not talking about new species, about Douglas fir, about pine, planting pine, about really seriously managing oaks. That are the questions, should we really now, as foresters and as forest owners, be as nature tells us, so more to nature, close to nature as we can. And as we know, nature is not adapting as quickly as this climate change is coming. The temperatures are as big as 500 up to 1,000 meters of altitude. The trees that are economically important can only migrate up to maybe 100 meters of altitude in one generation, and this is 5-10 generations of migration. So we must proactively plant, do more proactive forestry, and also do more in forests and invest more in forests. And we are waiting for that decisions to be done, also to be written on paper in Slovenian strategies, if this is what we want as a nation. Otherwise, we fear that Slovenian forest owners and also the forestry as sector will be more or less just picking dead wood here and there, and at the end that is not also foresters are not needed for that. Okay, thank you.
Thank you for your perspective. And now we are moving from live panelists to the online panelists. And our first online panelist will be Robert Mauser, who have a really nice keynote presentation this morning. So I would like to ask you, Robert, to give us input into this roundtable.
So thank you very much for this. I'm sorry to again take the floor, given that I was already this morning talking quite long, and I don't want to repeat the same messages again maybe here, but unfortunately I will partly need, because the question here that I understood was the role of forest science and the implementation of its results supporting forest resilience, bioeconomy in a changing climate. So yes, we heard from many of our colleagues that there are a lot of challenges, many obstacles in implementing our work, and that we are facing things in terms of forest ecology, risks management that we did not experience before. But I would at the same time want to better maybe look at the opportunities that we are presented with as the sector and consequently as researchers. The Green Deal was mentioned before by our colleague from the Ministry of Environment, which presents basically a turn in EU policies, trying to become carbon neutral, focusing on biodiversity conservation, on circular bioeconomy, even though it recognizes forest in a limited way, like to providing space for biodiversity protection. I still believe that it provides also strong opportunities for the forest sectors and possibilities that we have as researchers in supporting the implementation of such policies. Also, the dimension developments and possibilities in the wood-based sector provides new avenues for research, but also requires new policies and new infrastructures to support it. So overall, it requires that we change. Business as usual will not do it anymore. We need to be innovative. We need to create alliances with other sectors. We need to strengthen the impact of our work. And of course, we also have to actively engage with policymakers and society to provide our knowledge and our capacities to them. So reaching out, in my opinion, will be the key, not only for the next few years, but for the future. So we need to step out from our labs, from our forests, develop new ideas, and embrace the new reality to make it work in our favor. As JFK said, every accomplishment starts with a decision to try. And I think now it's really the time that we try to change a little bit what we are doing and how we are doing. So I have been very brief because I think that we are already a little bit late today. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Robert. So we are working on the informed dialogue between science and policy for the future. Thank you. And now I would like to ask our next Zoom contributor, that is Michele Bozzano, coordinator of the European Programme for Forest Genetic Resources. Michele, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Heike, for giving me this opportunity again to contribute to this discussion. Well, actually, so many speakers before me have been already very nicely setting the scene, so unavoidably, I will be repeating some of the things that I've already said. Anyway, we are speaking now here about setting priorities. Setting priorities with what kind of research we need, which kind of research we need to fund. So forest genetic resources, in the way I see it, the way I'm really convinced, they are really central. And why we have to, but still, why we have to devote resources to forest genetic conservation, forest genetic monitoring. As already highlighted by several speakers, the European Commission in the end of 2019 have released the European Green Deal, which is an important commitment on how the European Commission is tackling climate change and trying to address the environmental degradation. The environment, its conservation, has really a crucial role in the European circular economy. So forest ecosystem, well, they will receive, they're already receiving quite a great attention from the European Green Deal, but also with the new EU forest strategy, they will really be at the center. The European forest strategy is going to call about reforestation and the restoration of degraded forests. This is because we want to set aside carbon. We want to make sure that the forests are already existing. They become more resilient. They are adapted to the new condition, and also that they are capable of really producing more timber to support our circular economy. So it means that in Europe we will be called we are already called to massive afforestation and forest landscape restoration, which require producing a huge amount of new seedlings that will need to be planted. And in the moment we know that the climate is happening, the local seed sorts that are available, they may not be, in terms of the species, but also about the genetic diversity that they have, they may be not the most suitable one to be planted. So we need to know what can be planted where, and finding this is all about genetic diversity, is all about the genetic resources. So conserving the genetic of forestry species is ensuring that we will always have a forest. We will only allow forests to continue adapt and to continue to deliver the services, both economical and ecological service. This is something that we want to make sure that our conservation activities is something that is done and is done forever. It's not something that is done for the next 5 or 10 years. So in the moment we don't really know what we are going to need in the future, is the really right moment that, I mean, is the moment we need to try to conserve everything that we have available. So being able to monitor how the genetic diversity is changing is really being able to know when we need to intervene. Managing the forest is an important tool that we have. We need to know what kind of management we need to do. We need to close, like it was said a few times already this morning, we need to close the gap between science and practitioner. We really need to have this very close communication. Climate is changing in a very, very fast way, faster than what the forest can cope with. And science, on the other side, is also gaining new knowledge, new understanding. So we need to make sure that these two changes that is really happening very fast, we need to support the transfer of knowledge. We need to support and keep increasing in the research so that this decision making is really supported. So again, the forest, the timber, the ecosystem service that they produce are really at the center of the European circular economy. The genetic diversity that we conserve ensure that our forest and therefore our circular economy will be able to adapt and face whatever challenge that we will be facing in the future. Again, we are running a little bit out of time now, but I think I will conclude here, and I hope we will have the possibility of having some exchange of opinion with the other panelists and people there in the audience or online. Thank you very much for giving me this opportunity.
Thank you very much, Michele, for stressing the importance of the conserving the adaptability potential of forests for the future challenges in the for their sustainability. Now I would like to ask Professor Philippe Saravanopoulos from Aristotle University in Thessaloniki, a member of the LIFEGENMON consortium and also the first author of the EUFORGEN working group report on development of the system of forest genetic monitoring. Phil, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Hoika. Good morning from Thessaloniki. Good morning from the Aristotle University. I will try to spend the next 5 minutes and give you a perspective, focusing mostly on forest genetic monitoring, as many other facets of what we discussed today have already been covered by the other panelists. So why should we be concerned about forest genetic monitoring? Why should we be concerned about continuing research and mostly starting the implementation on a large-scale basis of forest genetic monitoring? Well, one answer is that because we are the people who are doing this work, so we would like to continue. But another answer is because it's really important for preserving biodiversity in Europe and global wise. And I will try to argue for the second answer. I will go back a few years. About 30 years ago in CBD in Rio decided that one of the targets would be to monitor biological diversity, and one of the focal areas there was genetic diversity and to investigate the trends in genetic diversity. That stayed on paper. It did not really materialize in real life. And then in 2011, the Aichi target discussed specifically that the genetic diversity of crop species and their wild relatives should be studied, protected, and perhaps monitored as well. Okay, so where did we go from there? Today, almost 30 years later, the new targets for the new biodiversity CBD approach discuss about genetic diversity, but they do not really give a specific indicator that would test genetic diversity, especially for the wild species. And in fact, there has been a letter to the journal Science recently by Linda Lecker and a number of colleagues who stressed this fact, the fact that genetic diversity and its monitoring through indicators is not really included in the new CBD. And this, since this is still a matter of debate, the aim or the hope is that it will change. So coming back to forced genetic monitoring per se, it's an instrument of prognosis. It's an early warning system for the protection of forced genetic resources. It works on a temporal scale, which means we need to have frequent, in terms of numbers of years, monitoring results. So in that respect, forced genetic monitoring falls within the realm of the greater need to establish really genetic indicators in the conservation of biodiversity. I think this is really important to happen at a local scale, at regional scale, as our LIFEGENMON project has successfully shown, and also at the greater scale, at the European scale, for instance, as our manual for forced genetic monitoring that we prepare is aiming towards for. So we need still to answer research questions on the scientific part of monitoring, but we need to start to implement forced genetic monitoring. And I would like to make this distinction that CBD 30 years ago, besides trends in genetic diversity, was referring also to trends in species diversity. And this has been well advanced through the Nature 2000 program in Europe. So we have, for the past 20 years, very good results on species diversity, which are not, in fact, the only way to have a comprehensive picture of how biodiversity is behaving. So that's why we need the genetic diversity analysis and genetic monitoring. But there is a scheme that works for species diversity. So we need to establish a scheme that would work for the genetic diversity monitoring in an analogous way that the Nature 2000 initiative works for the monitoring of species diversity. So where forced genetic monitoring should be used and implemented, of course, in the UN 2030 Sustainable Development Goals, in the EU Biodiversity Strategy, in the EU Green Infrastructure Strategy, definitely, in the future European Environment Actions Program, of course, in the EU Forestry Strategy, it has to be stressed per se, and so on. So what we really need is to continue, work deeper, start to implement, and also work on the policy level, as some other panelists have already quite nicely indicated. Because the integration of genetic benefits, genetic studies into environmental related decisions, into forest related decisions, is something that is long due and must happen in the immediate future. Hopefully, the Green Deal can be a first level to continue this work, but we need to work more on starting the implementation. And I would like to stress on my closing line that because genetic monitoring has to develop first baseline data and then to really start monitoring what is the change, we're in immediate need to create this baseline data today. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Phil. Yes, so already with this roundtable today, we are contributing, I think, to the proposal of the member states, as well as to the proposals within the European programs and activities to support the implementation of conservation of forest genetic resources and genetic diversity, and forest genetic monitoring in all national and in European strategies for the future, I hope. So now I would like to ask the next important member of the LIFEGENMON partnership, that is Dr. Barbara Fussi from Tysendorf Institution for Forest Genetics, to present some experiences from the German projects and implementation of their results in practice. Barbara?
Hello, dear colleagues. Let me come now from the international level to the national level. We have established 14 plots for beech and 10 plots for spruce along the whole country. They have been established and genetically analyzed, and thereby the GenMon project was an important step forward in the implementation of forest monitoring in Germany for the conservation and also for the use of forest genetic resources. By the financing of the project by 2 federal German ministries, they expressed their clear interest in such activities. In a huge effort, we gained valuable results as baseline data for the entire range of the 2 species in Germany. Because of the commitment of the partners and the state ministries, we are also able to continue the monitoring in the future. And even more locally, in Bavaria, we will establish gene conservation stands for beech and fir based on genetic data, and we will closely follow them by monitoring in the future. However, the most critical phase is still to come, I think, which is even more important than the past project years, because it's the phase of keeping up the plots, perform regular assessments, and repeat genetic analysis after a certain period. It is the long-term character and the repetition cycles that are the key of forest genetic monitoring. And without this long-term perspective, all the work that has been invested until now would be lost in terms of monitoring. But especially the raise of awareness about the importance of genetic diversity in different stakeholder groups is one of the cornerstones to obtain the acceptance for such time-consuming activities, long-term activities, as forest genetic monitoring. And through the LIFEGENMON project, we were provided by funds with means to raise awareness about genetic diversity, as well as in the general public, but also with forest professionals and policymakers. Most importantly, we think that we were able to make foresters integrate the knowledge on genetic diversity in their daily routine. For example, by educating forest professionals in our annual training courses, we can regularly update them on genetic diversity topics and relevant results. And through numerous excursions to the plots, we were able to convince different stakeholders that genetic diversity is really crucial for adaptability of our forests under climate change. Even young children now know that each tree in a forest is different from the other one, and they could form families just like humans. When we wrote the project about 7 years ago, we had the feeling that time has really come for action. And we think that it is better to start the process and see about the outcomes than not to start and not to see and not to learn anything from it. Thank you.
Thank you, Barbara. It is indeed of utmost importance to know and to spread the knowledge about the importance of professional background and the importance of genetic diversity as the main point in supporting in quality, for example, in forest reproductive material, for its success in establishing and regenerating new forests, and for the success, for the resilience of future forests to the changing environments. Now we have finished with the overview and the statements of all the different representatives invited to contribute to the round table about forest science for future forests and its implementation in practice. We would like now to ask the audience if anyone would like to have any further comments, any further statements.
Is there anyone who wants to contribute to the roundtable, online or in the lecture room?
Well, hello to everybody from Bavaria. I just wanted to contribute my 5 cents to the discussion. I'm responsible for the dissemination activities in Germany, for those who followed me yesterday. From my experience, especially schools and teachers are very interested in personal visits from specialists like us to talk to the students about the threats to forests and climate change, and how forests can help to lower the impacts of climate change. So maybe the ministries of education should integrate more specialist visits into their curriculums. And I think we produced already a lot of good dissemination material and concepts to help with this. So this I just wanted to say.
Thank you, Mark. We have another a point in chat by Fotis Georgis from Greece, and his question is, how do you see in the future the protection of forest genetic resources and forest genetic monitoring as a commercial or a public service? From my point, it is rather clear. It's of part of the common forest service for the Slovenian part, but maybe there is some other opinion.
So, are there any other comments, suggestions, ideas, proposals?
So if not, yes?
Regarding the comment that we should focus on schools and young children, at the time that they will be actually decision makers and they will decide what to do with the forests, it will be too late. It's good to talk with general public about these problems, also with children, but we must focus our efforts on experts, on real now decision makers, on politics, on strategies that are now open, on forest strategy, implementation on biodiversity strategy, rural development funds, other funds, how this proactive forestry, if we will decide for proactive forestry, what we hope, will be financed. That is our perspective, not to lose ourselves in general public. Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much. Indeed, we have our communication, especially in LIFEGENMON, is directed. It's a twofold communication. One is general public, starting with children. The other one is target dissemination, aiming at specifically practice implementation and policymakers, definitely. However, I must also state that our efforts aiming to children, for example, with the children books and everything that was prepared for them, that was quite well accepted also by policymakers who have young children at home, and they learn from their communication with their own families. So this was quite useful. Yes?
One comment to the children. I mean, there is a rather good experience in Slovenia regarding how to transfer the good practices to children. It was actually waste companies or sorting companies approach the parents through children, and then children, that was like 10, 15 years ago, children pushed the parents to start sorting waste and that kind of things. So that was kind of good knowledge transfer, because then just parents, they just don't want to be annoyed by the children each time, and so that was kind of considered as a good practice. So I think we have to work on different levels, not only one, but different levels.
Yes, thank you very much. Now we are approaching now the time for the press conference, so I would like to close up now the roundtable discussion on the role of forest science and the implementation of its results, supporting forest resilience and bioeconomy in changing climates. I would like to thank all the invited contributors, as well as for the audience and all who have contributed to the discussion. I would propose that a group of us, we prepare the conclusions of the roundtable and circulate it among the active participants in the next few days. And then we also try to publish it on our homepage and in media, in hopefully not just Slovenian, but also some European international media, if you accept. So with this, I would like to conclude this roundtable.